You're listening to Contesting Wrestling. Thanks. Good choice. You should continue to do that. Presumably you've done it before, and you're in for a good time. Listener, thanks for doing that. I'm Evan Burke. I don't like wrestling. You know that. If you don't, welcome to the idea of this podcast. I don't care for it.
If you don't, you've clearly never watched the podcast. Excuse me. If you don't, you've clearly never listened to the podcast before, or you've
If
been
you
listening
have
and not
watched
paying
this
attention.
podcast, then you have been secretly recording us without our knowledge, and I would like access to those files.
I mean, this does go on YouTube, but as far as I know, it's just a graphic of our logo.
Evan, someone emailed me threatening something like that recently. Yeah,
Oh,
so
okay.
hopefully that's
all
not
yeah,
real.
that'll be. That's
Yeah.
right. I do.
Okay. Except
I
they
do
weren't
go into
talking
a
about the
fugue state
podcast.
sometimes and threaten people on the internet. But that's. But I'm in. Look, I'm in therapy. COVID was hard for everybody. The point is that WrestleMania 37 happened recently. WrestleMania 37, as I learned in my Spanish class recently, because it's important to keep your brain active as you enter old age over 35.
And those of us who are about as old as WrestleMania have a very clear metric, are reminded every year just how old we are.
So when they stopped openly naming WrestleManias after the number, I was a little skeptical. You know, I was like, that's stupid. It's not like people think the Super Bowl is getting old. And then, like, every year I'm aware of what, like, WrestleMania it is, but I haven't really thought about it much for a few years. And then this time I'm, like, looking it up and I see it's 37. And I, like, when I first saw that, because I hadn't thought about it until a couple of days before the event, I audibly went, oh. So maybe it's not the worst thing in the world. It's like the first WrestleMania I was aware of since I started watching was 9, and the first one I watched live was 10.
I mean,
and
if
that was
being
27
honest,
years
the 5
ago.
years between 35 and 40 is basically the time in which you are in middle age, but it takes you 5 years to admit it to yourself. Right? Because, like, 35 is middle-aged at this point in time, especially in America with our life expectancy plummeting with each passing year. So, like, and then, like, it just takes a little while.
Stop!
Anyway,
Yes.
You're Evan Burke.
I don't.
You don't like wrestling. I'm Dr. Ben Abelson. I'm a professor of philosophy at Mercy College. I do like wrestling. And my other glorious co-hosts. First.
Well, my name is Doc Diamondfire. I've been in wrestling for, well, the number's going up, about 13 years now. I've done a little bit of everything behind the scenes and in front of the camera. I love
especially
each
behind
and every
the scenes.
job there. Well, yeah, actually, I've done a lot of different jobs behind the scenes. There's a lot that goes into putting on live events and recorded events and live streamed events and everything. And you gotta, if you're doing something, you gotta love the hard parts of it, and so I do.
Hard
and I'm here
parts
to lend
indeed.
this
When is this episode going out?
Behind the scenes.
probably on Wednesday.
Okay, if that's the case. And I am, as always, Katie Vella. I am a professional referee. And where can you see me referee? I hear you ask. Why, this Saturday at 3 p.m. on Twitch at MV Young's Polyam Cult Party 3.
Oh yeah,
Should be a great
you're
time.
starting to get around, Katie.
It's
It's
nice.
been a long time coming. Yeah, for sure.
Has it been a long
It
time
happened a
coming?
while ago. Of course it has. If anybody knows you well enough to think it's been a long time coming, it's look.
Yeah,
you
you're
were at a
almost
place.
a vet at this point.
I'm glad that you are on this episode because this is the first time in a while where I actively noticed some quality reffing going on in at least one of the matches by a guy who I was not familiar with, or at least a guy who I didn't recognize.
So, this was WrestleMania 37. Katie and Doc and I chose 3 matches that we thought were particularly good. So we've really, at this point in the podcast, for Evan's sake, abandoned
one of
the
these
good
was
match,
not
bad
a
match
bad match.
dichotomy.
Oh.
No, though maybe.
No.
Well, we'll see.
They were all supposed to be good, Evan. You just
Yeah.
hate wrestling.
I'm actually curious.
Listen, be happy we
Look,
didn't send you the Fiend match.
Yeah.
If they were gonna do Firefly Funhouse 2, we would have watched it, but they didn't. He just wrestled Randy Orton.
Or we also didn't make you, though the match itself was kind of good. What was surrounding it was quite awful. We didn't make you watch the Nigerian drum fight.
You mean the one with the drums that added nothing to the match at all between two guys who were going to wrestle their ass off and put on a great match either way?
Yes, drums that were by no means Nigerian in any way. They were actually quite clearly the drums of very disparate cultures.
Nor were they used at all in the
Okay,
match.
I mean, yeah, I am.
I don't think so.
I mean, I'm glad. Obviously. I'm
Yeah,
glad,
but
obviously,
see,
that
it
we
could be
didn't watch
worse.
that.
But Evan, there is one thing in particular that maybe you did that I'm wondering whether you noticed, which
Well,
would
let's
make
start
the
at
difference.
the beginning. Let's not get right to the high spots
all
here.
right,
you
all
know.
right, fine.
Come on.
So, first match from night one, WrestleMania was 2 nights this time, which was good because instead of one 7-hour show, it was two slightly over 3 hour
excellent
shows.
choice. That as somebody who is, I'm still watching the Snyder Cut. I still haven't. I have like 15 minutes left.
Oh man,
I just can't bring. I just.
the first 2 hours were hilarious.
I will say I don't know if I
believe
said
that was
this
the
last time or
intention.
not, but like to me, this is a quick digression. To me, the difference between the Joss Whedon version and the Zack Snyder version of Justice League is kind of the difference between like your sort of bog standard centrist liberals and your insane libertarians, right? So like Joss Whedon basically is like he's like shoveling shit in your mouth, and he's like, "This is what poor people like, right? This is what you schmucks want."
On record, by the way. By the way,
terrible
fuck
human
Joss
being.
Whedon.
Wildly overrated writer. And also, I frankly think his style of writing kind of ruined screenwriting for like a generation. But also, like, I think it was just like him being like, "This is what you fuckers like, right? Who cares? This doesn't need to fucking make sense. This doesn't need to be anything good. Give me this check." I don't, and then he'll go out and like pretend like, "Oh yeah, I love Batman," and like sort of like do a big show about like, "Oh, I'm trying to do right by the fans," but none of it matters. It's such a cynical, empty cash grab. Whereas Zack Snyder is an insane person with horrible values, and he's not good at what he does, and I don't like it, but it is at least something. It is at least a coherent vision and a coherent ideology. It is a bad one that should not be given like more attention or anything, but it is I do at least have to give it to him that he has some kind of a vision. Justice League is
Yeah,
I
agree entirely.
It is honestly,
That
the
was my
Snyder Cut
feeling,
is
yeah.
arguably better than every single Marvel movie, not because I enjoyed it more than the Marvel movies or anything, but just because it is actually like trying to be a unique something.
Yeah, I mean, it is a very clear, heavy-handed kind of Christian allegory.
It is
right?
at least
but that's something.
Yeah.
That is like
Yeah.
a meaningful artistic move to make.
But anyway, sorry, wrestling. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So the first match we're talking about is Seth Rollins taking on the long overlooked Cesaro. Finally getting his first ever one-on-one match at WrestleMania and getting a chance to really shine. And
For almost 10 years with the company.
yeah. So I don't know. Let's just,
Okay.
Evan.
Well,
launch
this
into it.
all right.
What
So
did you
this
think
is going to
of
come
this
with
match?
with a bit of an announcement for the fans, because Seth Rollins this is going to come with an announcement for our listeners, because when Seth Rollins came out and stared directly into the camera and let the camera look into his soul, I knew in that moment I had about maybe 10 episodes of contesting wrestling left in me. Seth.
This will probably be the last
I'm
Seth
very
Rollins
happy to
match
hear
you
about
have
that.
to watch, by the way.
It's
I thought about that. I didn't want to give you another Seth Rollins match, but Cesaro's performance was so
Cesaro was great.
awesome
I could tell
that
that
I
this
felt
was like
like you should
technically
see
a
it.
good match, and I just have reached a point where it's just like hard for me to care. But I think part of it is that Seth Rollins sort of, to me, exemplifies the things about wrestling that make it so hard for me to get into, where it's just, even when it is like, Seth Rollins is pretty good at what he does, right? Like, it's and it's hard.
He's
and
an
it's
incredible
still,
athlete,
I just
you know?
still can't fucking bring myself to give two shits about him instead of just wanting to do something else.
It's honestly, your opinion is not that uncommon amongst even people who do enjoy wrestling.
True. I mean, I think he's gotten better as a heel at making you want to see someone punch him in the face.
I mean, that promo he cut when they were rain delayed was the best promo he's ever cut. I'm not being sarcastic.
Yeah. So there's a thing that happened at WrestleMania that I think would be more up your alley, Evan, although it was like 45 weird minutes, so we weren't going to send it to you. So they were rain delayed at night one. They started the show, and the first thing that they really did was say, like, well, it's raining because it's Florida and we're having thunderstorms, so we're gonna go to the back. Bobby Lashley is standing by. And then they had 45 minutes or so of disparate, unscripted promos from the guys.
I honestly
who were
probably
about to
would have
wrestle.
enjoyed that a
And
lot
they
more
were
than the actual
great.
wrestling.
They were, yeah. Bobby Lashley comes up. He's like, I'm fighting Drew McIntyre for the title, and I'm gonna beat him. And then, like 30 seconds later, Drew McIntyre shows up, and you could tell all they told them was, "You're beefing, go," and it was great.
Yeah, they didn't have a plan.
No, and a couple of there were different styles instead of everybody sounding exactly the same, because inside everybody's head sounds different, and they put it on out, and I don't know. I was a big fan.
That
One of the best
that
things about
sounds
WrestleMania
delightful.
to me.
That
this
sounds like it would be a lot of fun.
It was
the
absolutely
audience-
delightful. Yes.
So is this
The first
was
thing
it,
on
were
night
they
one.
like were fans allowed to be in the audience, or is this an audience of all WWE employees?
This
Those-
is 25,000 real fans.
And they're actually way more spaced out than it looks. If you see like fan cams, they did a really good job of hiding
I
how
kind of
spaced
assumed
out
it was just.
They also
Was the thing,
filled them in with
I
some
assumed
cardboard
that it was like
cutouts.
people
Yeah.
immediately around the ring, and then like piped in noise and maybe like CGI people or something, and the rest. No, okay.
No. It was real. There was all that
Yeah.
crazy CGI stuff that for the entrances. But and
that's
I don't know
weird.
if you noticed at the end of the match, Cesaro like sort of very emotionally like telling the fans how much he loves them. And there were a lot of moments like that where it's like, we miss you, and I'm sure that all of that is completely genuine.
Oh,
you
Rhea
know?
Ripley was crying on the stage night one.
Yeah. Oh,
And
man,
you
that was
saw it
very
with
that was
Bianca
really
Belair,
emotional,
which
man.
we'll get to as well.
Well, that was for a lot of reasons. I think beyond even just the fans.
Yeah, that was the
We'll
match
get
I
it-
enjoyed
yeah,
the
we'll get
most
to
out of
that.
these three. Yeah.
It was one of the best matches of the both the main events. I think were really incredible, but
The thing with Cesaro and Rollins, like, I'm not a big Rollins fan either, but what they were trying to do in this match was make Cesaro look as impressive as possible. And if you need somebody to be the other end of all of Cesaro's stuff, who you know is going to land on his feet when he needs to and be in exactly the right position where he needs to be and keep the match going at a pace, I think Rollins was the right choice for all of that.
Rollins
and that's
also,
why, it might be my favorite Seth Rollins match, which may be a bit of a low bar, but
the other thing about Rollins is he can do a ton of spectacular stuff, and you still hate him. He's not going
I
to
don't
steal
know.
the thunder from Cesaro. So Cesaro
I don't know
can
if
remain
I
the
can
babyface.
explain this in a way that makes sense, but Seth Rollins is a man who, like, even though he is frequently seen with his shirt off and he's definitely just one guy, has the energy of three really small guys in a trench coat pretending to be one guy. I know that doesn't really make sense, but it is true. If you look within your heart, you know it to be true.
Here's how it makes sense to me as a wrestling fan. When Seth Rollins first showed up as Tyler Black on the Indies, his gimmick was that he was a fan of ROH who wanted to be like the guys he watched in ROH. And he's still that. He's still the fucking fanboy who wants to be a cool wrestler who just isn't. And you saw it in the moves he did in this match. He does the fucking Chris Hero elbow to the back of the head. He does the low-key, crazy, feint kick thing, Shining Wizard thing. He's still just ripping
I know that
off
I always
other
say,
people's cool
man,
shit.
especially like after we watch like the Jericho matches and stuff, I always say, oh, I wish more people talked in the ring. Seth Rollins should not talk in the ring at all. It's kind of like when you give
I thought about that.
Yarrow,
It's like when you give people the advice, like, oh, just be yourself, but that doesn't work if you suck. Like, because if you suck, you should absolutely not be yourself.
I survived the neutralizer. I survived the swing. I am
That's
a god.
an incredibly good Seth Rollins.
Ugh.
Yeah, man. You
That was
really got
that
it.
was good.
Oh, man.
He's been watching
he's
Seth
been a major
Rollins
character.
a long time, Evan.
So, towards the end, we get Seth goes for the curb stomp, and Cesaro pops him right up into the air and hits the big European uppercut, which I was sure that spot was going to happen in the match because, you know, it's the two of them, and that's the kind of thing they would do. And then Cesaro does a move called the UFO.
Oh, he
where
hadn't
he's
done that in so long.
So he has his opponent on his shoulders. He spins around like crazy, and then he drops his hands down so that he's not even holding on by his hands. Which it would have been more awesome if Michael Cole hadn't said over and over again, "He did it with no hands. He did it with no hands."
Oh
And
my
the
God, Michael Cole.
The commentary. So I watched this stuff twice. I watched it when it aired live. And I was in like a semi-outdoor kava bar with a couple of friends. And there was music playing inside. We had the volume on, but not all that loud. So I couldn't hear any of the commentary, really. Which made WrestleMania a million times fucking better than when I watched these matches again at home for the podcast. And Michael Cole... First of all, he wasn't supposed to commentate on any of these matches. They were SmackDown matches. But something happened to Tom Phillips.
Yeah.
So,
They forgot to plug him in. So he didn't have any power. So they had to get Michael
Right.
Cole.
He didn't charge overnight.
he's rather
Right.
robotic, but that's better than Michael Cole. Far more preferable. Apparently he violated COVID protocol in some way. And
Oh, well,
no.
then keep
they're
him
not
off.
going to work with him afterwards. I wonder if that has anything to do with that stuff he was texting on the plane that time. I know if any of you
I don't
remember that.
I don't have any idea what
Had
you're talking
something
about.
to do with
sorry.
face fucking. And then
that was
Corey,
years ago, though,
Corey
wasn't it?
Graves called him out for it on commentary. Yeah. Anyway.
I know. You know who was great at
some kind of
commentary?
adultery.
Samoa Joe.
I saw on
Yeah.
Twitter was upset that he
Yep.
got fired. I mean, I also am that, yeah.
They're not. It's. I'm not upset because, judging by Twitter's reaction to fantasy booking him against everyone that's wrestling right now, Samoa Joe is gonna.
That means he's gonna go to
just fine.
AEW?
Yeah.
Right.
No. Samoa Joe. Excuse me.
Maybe.
Samoa Joe is going to be all elite.
I would prefer him going to New Japan.
He might. No.
Personally.
That also.
There's
he,
a
he
lot
might do
more
that.
cool matches for him.
We're
there.
also assuming he's going to go back to wrestling like a full schedule, but I think he wants to.
He might be too hurt. Like, I don't really know what's going on.
Yeah, well, I
think
have a,
what he wants is as much money as possible. And
my
whoever brings it
suspicion-
to him.
my
he'll
suspicion
go.
as to why he ended up a part of this last round of cuts, which were supposedly budget cuts, even though WWE is making more profit than ever. My suspicion is that they had no intention of using him in the ring anymore, and he was probably still getting and supposed to be getting for a while a wrestler salary or wrestler pay. He
Yeah,
probably had a
near
way
top
bigger
guy's
contract than
salary.
what they were using him for.
That makes sense to me as anything.
So Cesaro does the UFO, and most of us thought, oh, wow, he hasn't done that since, like, Ring of Honor. But my friend Oliver reminded me that he actually did it to Drew Gulak on the WrestleMania pre-show last year.
Huh.
Which
That
was
makes
a-
sense.
Nobody watched that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it was
So-
a good match. It was actually one of the better matches of the WrestleMania event last year, I thought, in ring at least.
That
but
makes
yeah,
sense.
we all immediately forgot about it. So, anyway, and then eventually he does the swing 23 times and then hits the second neutralizer to win the match. So, Evan, what did you think about these moves of Cesaro's?
The swinging was fun. I saw the swinging. I noticed that he was kinetic. I'll be honest with you, man. I'm having the last few episodes. I mean, I just have a rough time. I'm sorry. I just
No,
it
it's
didn't
okay.
really...
If it didn't make a big impression, say it didn't make a big impression.
He's
That's
just, like, for
valid.
us, he's just incredibly strong and athletic in a unique way. And he's probably the greatest base in the history of pro wrestling.
He also
When you
fine
say
as
a
hell.
base,
So the base, the guy who stands there while the
Oh,
other
okay,
guy
interesting.
flips around on him and can hold people up in various ways that are necessary.
If you don't have a good base, everybody just falls over and everybody looks like an idiot.
I'm a terrible
and Cesaro
base.
may be the greatest base in wrestling.
All right, well, so moving on to the main event of night one, the SmackDown Women's Championship match between Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks. An incredibly significant match in many ways. And for that significance, a very emotional match. Here we have Sasha Banks, who's been one of the pillars of women's wrestling in WWE, of this renaissance of women's wrestling over the last several years.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Defending her title against a woman who is, part of the new vanguard of the women's division coming up. And we have two black women main eventing WrestleMania for the first time ever, which has, hearing Michael Cole say it takes away from it somehow.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that he said it actually, because before this they were just being like a historic match, but Michael Cole actually said it.
I'll defer to all the black wrestlers and wrestling fans I see on Twitter about this, and everyone that I've seen mention that specifically really loved the fact that Michael Cole just said it's like two black women main eventing WrestleMania, not a bunch of other qualifiers. He didn't say two African American competitors. No, two black women main evented WrestleMania.
True.
Great.
Yeah. Okay.
And they did very well.
Fair enough. They did incredibly well. I mean, this
The match was amazing.
It's technically great. It's creative. Even though they both, I think they both are more natural heels, just because they're somewhat arrogant just in their personas. They differentiated them by having Bianca, be more emotional at the beginning of the match, Sasha being more cold and ruthless. So they did a really good job of creating this face-heel dynamic out of two wrestlers who were actually faces, basically, going into the match.
Honestly,
I would make an argument that their arrogance is meant to be, if not a full-on face kind of thing, just because I feel like arrogance and heels, I would imagine, usually go together, because when somebody is arrogant, it's traditionally a sign that you are supposed to not like this person. But I kind of see their arrogance as a earned sort of a it's meant for you to put yourself in. It's almost like maybe not a cathartic arrogance, but it's more of a I earned this, and your support is sort of supposed to celebrate it with them. That's kind of like I was unfamiliar with Belair. What's your first name? Bianca. I was unfamiliar with Bianca Belair before this. She's incredible. The first 5 seconds of her entrance is more interesting than Seth Rollins' entire career put together. Her character is amazing. Her physicality is amazing. But yeah, I think the whole EST thing is fucking absolutely brilliant. And it's brilliant to the point where it's arrogant, but there's no way that you're not going to like it. You know what I mean? There's no way for you to not get behind it.
She's undeniable. Yeah.
See,
I meant more that they were both
sure,
heels in their genesis. of those characters.
Yeah, I was about to kind of say what Evan said. I think Bianca's actually a really natural face. Sasha, though, definitely is better, way better as a heel.
And I think Bianca will bring in could potentially, if they really push her the way they should, bring in a whole kind of audience to wrestling that has been alienated from it for a long time.
She wrestles in this really interesting style that is like reminiscent of like a strongman style of wrestling, or like sort of like you know, like if China had been like maybe more developed as a wrestler kind of thing, where it's like truly strength based. And she looks strong, but she doesn't look like she doesn't have a bodybuilder's physique or a bodybuilder's energy. Like she's almost like shockingly strong. Like,
oh, she does.
She is perhaps the most legitimate athlete in all of wrestling. And she's a track and field star. And she's just, her strength and speed and agility is pretty much unparalleled.
Yeah, she's very muscular. She doesn't have that steroid thickness body that someone like China developed, you know. She has a bodybuilder's body, but a bodybuilder that would build to 125, 135, not to 170. Which is, you know... Yeah.
More similar to sort of Cesaro's physique in a lot of ways.
If there is any critique to make, it is a critique that I would make with pretty much any other wrestler who has, like, extremely long hair or an extremely long beard or something, which is that it is awesome. She uses it in a way that's really interesting, where it's clearly like a +3 weapon. It just strains kayfabe ever so slightly, that for a wrestler to have such a liability.
Well, I think they kind of dealt with that really well in the match. Like, Sasha attempts to use it against her several times, and Bianca is able to turn it back in her favor. You know, like, Sasha's pulling on it on the outside, and Bianca is so strong that she just pulls back and
she
slams
is
Sasha
able to
into
do
the post.
things with it and uses it as a prop in a way that, like, other, like, wrestlers with really long hair or long beards or whatever don't.
There was a picture that went around after that match. She damn near sliced Sasha open with that big crack at the end.
At the beginning of the match,
you can see it.
Excellent ref work from this dude who I did not recognize, but he's
Ryan
fucking
Tran.
excellent refing. And in the first few minutes, like, a bunch of very sharp-looking hair clips fall off of, I presume, Bianca, but I don't know. But at least 2 hair clips fall off of her that you see the ref grab up real quick.
It was the letters that were
That's
on
literally
her
part of a ref's job, is to keep the ring clear.
Yeah. Right, she had EST clips. You know, when she comes, she had a great entrance. Usually when she comes down, she's a lot more dynamic with her braid. She's swinging it around and everything. Because of her costume with the tassels and because of the carefully placed silvery EST, she had to be very careful with her head and not tangle her hair in the tassels and make sure it was all right. And she nailed it 100%. But I think that's just a notable note about the entrance.
So, one other thing about the reffing is there was a moment where Sasha's shoulders might have been down for 3 during one of their exchanges, and she just barely kind of got it up, and the ref did a really good job of registering that he was checking and the shoulders weren't down.
Yeah,
and
Ryan
so he didn't
Tran is
count to
awesome.
3. Yeah.
He's been a ref for over 10 years for them now.
So yeah,
I like the spot, to your point, Evan, about the strongman style, where Bianca pressed Sasha Banks over her head outside of the ring and climbed the stairs
she
to
kind
throw
of did
her
some
over
shit
the
that
top
made me
rope
think
back
about
in.
when we watched one of the Jericho Cassidy matches. There was a point where Chris Jericho had Orange Cassidy up, and then he did a couple squats with him, sort of trying to show off, and then you could see on Jericho's face immediately afterwards, I shouldn't have fucking done that. Oh fuck, I do not have the juice left. And you see her kind of do that a few times, and then she's fine afterwards.
And not only that, first, so she gets her up in the suplex position, bounces her off 2 of the ropes. Then Sasha tries to reverse. She gets her back into the position and then does the squatting thing twice. I've never seen anyone control that suplex position.
Oh, she's impossibly
it's
strong.
like really especially it's funny, like, you know, you watch so much wrestling with, like, I mean, all of these people are relatively strong, right? Like, that's you can't really do this if you're not, but it's really notable with her. Like, it's really I was incredibly impressed.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the end, after she gets that huge crack with the braid, she finally hits Sasha with the KOD, which is a J. Cole reference, I believe.
Yeah, the kiss of death.
Yeah.
KOD.
And fucking Michael Cole doesn't call the finish.
Oh my fucking
He calls
God.
that Sasha kicked out. I'm so glad I didn't hear that.
I'm so
when I was watching it
I
the
didn't
first
hear
time.
it too. I didn't hear it either the first time.
And and Bianca won, and it was so fucking cool. It was, to me, it was clearly the best match of WrestleMania.
Yeah, the only one that even has an argument against it is the main event tonight too, which
Yeah.
we are about to talk about.
Yeah, and one of the best main WrestleMania events of all time, comparing them all together, as we have we've gotten through a lot of them on this podcast already.
We have.
Evan has Evan has a notch in the wall for each match,
The wall of
WrestleMania
my
match
soul.
we forced him to watch.
And we've gotten through almost all of them now. There's only a few WrestleManias we haven't touched yet.
Which ones?
4, 15, 26, and 27. And I have
26 is ass.
I have plans for all of them in these next 10 to 15
no one said
episodes,
15.
so
No one
that Evan
said
may
15.
still be here for.
If I remember, 25 and 26 are both back-to-back notoriously, like, complete ass.
15 is probably the worst.
No, I said no one said
the worst
15
match you'll have
episodes.
to
No one
watch
said that 15
thought
more
of.
episodes was never in the running. I said
Oh,
10
you
to 12.
didn't say-
In the Slack, I said 10 to 12. Really.
Right,
Let's
that
say-
was my... Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Look, I know my years 26 and 27 were pretty much the low point for me, so I can't really hold that against WrestleMania if they experience the same thing.
Oh, yeah, the rock bottom over here. And not in the wrestling way.
Well, actually, the one that I'm thinking of for 27 would have a rock bottom in it. But
Right when the
I
Rock came
couldn't
back
tell
for
you
a
what
minute
match
there.
you're talking about.
I can't remember who
Out.
said it. I wish I could credit this properly, but I did see somebody on Twitter say that hitting rock bottom is when you're topping Dwayne Johnson.
That's fantastic.
Wow.
All right, so heavily emotional match. Great stuff by both Bianca and Sasha. It got a tremendous response. Wrestling fans were really happy that it happened and that it main evented the first night, and that, you know, one of them feel good moments that you get occasionally, and it makes things good.
absolutely. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where they go from here in the SmackDown Women's division. And another point to make is they changed all 3 singles women's titles over the last week. So
Yeah,
it's really
every
they're
single one.
presenting the next generation of them, which is cool. That this is the fucking women's renaissance.
Like there
stuck,
gets to be another
you
generation.
know, and they did exactly. They haven't rolled back on it, and it's fucking awesome. We got Raquel Gonzalez is the NXT Women's Champion.
I
Rhea
haven't
Ripley
watched
is
a lot
the
of
Raw
NXT
Women's
lately. Apparently she got really good at some point.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And her match with Io Shirai was fantastic on TakeOver.
I believe
So
it.
I'm very excited for the future of women's wrestling, which, you know, to be perfectly honest, is the future of wrestling. Like they're who I want to see.
Yeah, I have to be honest with you. Like, you know, we're gonna get into the next match, which features, you know, 3 of the biggest guys in wrestling. One person who is Ben's favorite wrestler of all time, and I found that match to be pretty fucking boring in comparison to this one with Sasha Banks and Bianca. Like,
Well, you have to understand, Evan. You
Yes.
don't like wrestling.
And I would like it more if it was just, you know what, if it was just wall to wall. If men weren't allowed to wrestle, I wouldn't be nearly as frustrated in this podcast as I am currently.
You aren't the only one that thinks that.
Because the problem is like, because I was
not.
I was really thinking about this while I was watching the Sasha Bianca match, because I was watching it and I was like, I am enjoying this. Like, I'm drawn in. Like, the way that, like, my consciousness just clouded over for the other two matches we watched, and I absorbed almost nothing that happened in the two of them. That cloud was gone for this match, and I was engaged and I was enjoying it, and I was thinking, maybe I don't need to stop doing this podcast. Actually, it's not so bad. And then the next one started, and I was like, these are three superstars, and these are three guys that, like, people and who are incredibly respected, and at least one guy who's, like, done matches I've really enjoyed, and I just fucking could give two shits about this. And, like,
This match depended a lot more on having emotional connections to all three guys. And I guess to some degree, maybe you have some sort of feeling for Brian at this point. But he was actually, to me, the least interesting guy in the match.
See, to me, it was interesting because it was three guys who all at some point in the last 10 years, or even 10 years because of Edge, have been told, your career is over. You're never going to wrestle again.
Yeah, that's very
Roman
notable.
maybe less so, but, like, there was a strong chance that he wasn't even going to live.
Yeah, from
Well,
leukemia.
Roman did the thing that a lot of very, like, you know, positive people will do when they get cancer, is that they'll say, I'm going to beat this and I'm coming back. And then it's all of our jobs as fans to have no attitude other than, you're going to beat this and you're coming back. But really, there's always a chance you're not going to beat this and you're not coming back, and everybody knows it, you know?
And despite such a positive attitude, what makes Roman... So this is what I wanted to know about Evan watching this match.
that he's a heel now?
Could you tell?
Okay, yes, I did. I
Okay,
did
yes,
catch
that he's a
that. I
heel,
did.
good.
Oh,
But that because he's a heel, they fixed him.
He's so much... He's finally everything he could have always been.
He is the Roman Reigns he always should
noticed-
have been now.
Yes.
from literally the second he walked out on stage, I was like, why do I find him more interesting now than I did previously? What is that?
Because he's
Good.
good. Because
Exactly.
This is how he should have always been.
He turned heel.
Saw that,
he,
yeah.
He joined up with Paul Heyman, and Paul Heyman adds so fucking much to this match.
He
Like,
does.
his
Paul
face
Heyman.
the whole
Paul.
time.
It turns out all Roman Reigns needed was Paul Heyman.
He took
Oh,
the fucking
the
tactical
reveal.
vest off.
Oh, yeah. No, he looks
He
great.
connected
The
his
reveal that he
beard.
was with Paul Heyman is one of the better moments of the last several years of wrestling. Because Roman had just been this, you know, unshakable babyface that people were booing, and he was going to get a title match, and they show him in the back, like, he had been balking on signing the contract. And it's like, why is Roman not signing the contract for the match? And he's like, I'm going to win the title. And that's not a promise, that's a spoiler. And it's like, wait, that's Heyman's line. And then they zoom out a little bit, and Heyman's there smiling, his Paul Heyman smile, like, look what I got. Because Lesnar has not been around.
Good.
Lesnar's contract ran out a year ago, and they have not signed him again.
And stay out.
Stay out, I'm done with him.
There's two things about Roman at this point that make it work. One, he actually has a character now with motivation. He's
What
the
is
tribal
the head
chief.
of the
He's the head of
table?
the table.
I was a
He
little
has this-
confused by that.
So he is the new patriarch of the Samoan dynasty, right? So he feeds his family by being a top wrestling star. With Jey Uso, who tried to rebel against Roman, and Roman broke him and made him into his lackey.
Yeah, they had a very long and uncomfortable cage match where Roman, like, did uncomfortable things to Jey Uso,
It's a
and at the
great
end of it,
match.
Jey submitted. Jey acknowledged him as the head
the
of
problem
the
was
table.
is that they were just trying to do something sort of too complicated with Roman too, because he was a face, but he wasn't a real, like, I will go to my grave saying that Fireman Joe, the sexy fireman who doesn't realize how sexy he is would have been the best possible,
Hell yeah.
at least face character for him. But yeah, turning him to an unambiguous villain, like that's the problem, is that he just can't do ambiguity. Don't make him do ambiguity.
They've been trying to have Steve Austin since Steve Austin. They've been trying to have the cool badass who's a babyface. I think
society's
it doesn't
kind
work.
of moved past that. For
There's
the moment.
one
like
yeah, totally.
There's one Steve Austin, and he came along at a time when culture at large was into the anti-hero.
And he was there a couple years, and for most of that, he literally had a broken neck.
Right, and he caught it towards the beginning of the real anti-hero, not an imitation at the end. So it worked. That was over 20 years ago now. Now, if you look at pop culture, right now, it's very sharp, very sharp black and whites, very sharp colors. There's not that much ambiguity. You can find it if you want it, of course. Somebody will be like, well, this show where it's all shades of gray. It's like, I'm sure. But no, people are into knowing where people stand right now. And, it'll probably change again. If you study pop culture over the last, since we've been able to record pop culture, it goes in, cycles. It goes back and forth. But yeah, right now is not the time for the good guy that's really the bad guy. We had that in the 90s and the 2000s and it's over. It's over. And when it does come back, it will look different from how it looked 20 years ago.
I always I
think that's important to note.
Oh, like as sort of a weird inverse to that kind of anti-hero character. I think I love the John Wick movies, and I always find that John Wick as a character is like, because he's like sort of this like, he's like this very like nice and like polite sort of like, he's like professional to the point of like really respecting his colleagues, and like, and he's not like mean to anybody really in those movies. Like he kills 70% of the Russian population of Los Angeles, but he's like very nice about it.
Sure.
And like the John Wick movies are incredibly Canadian in
that's
a way
what people
that
like.
is great for, and it's just pure Keanu Reeves. But yeah, like to me, like that's almost like the inverse of the it's still the anti-hero, but it's like the I guess like the sliders are moved into different places, kind of.
Yeah, it's not the same straight-up hero that was big in the 80s. It looks different now, because our heroes are still supposed to be flawed characters that do dirty work, but you need the moral code of the good
have you guys
of
seen
the hero at this point.
the second John Wick movie? By any chance, anybody seen it with Common?
No.
Yeah.
I've never seen any of them. I'm not gonna lie.
I will say they
This
are
reference has lost me.
head and shoulders way better and more interesting than any other action movie that gets made these days. But they are.
Except maybe Mad Max.
But there's a scene in the second. That's true. I wish
and
that
Dread was pretty.
There's a scene in the second one where John Wick and the guy who's played by Common are having like a gunfight in a crowded subway, and in all other action movies, like people are like, nobody cares if like innocent bystanders die, none of this matters. But in this, they're like very politely shooting at each other, like they have these little tiny guns with silencers, and they're just sort of walking around along, like really making sure they're not hitting anybody else, and just kind of like pew 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 pew, and it's like this like low key gunfight. It's very fun.
Yeah, like. That's great. Like, that hasn't been done to death, and people want it, People saw, not that the Transformers movies were failures on any level, but people looked at, like, the Transformers movies and were like, well, didn't they just kill all those people? That's a problem. Maybe there's a hole in the market where we can have the heroes not just kill thousands
of
people.
I think you guys would actually enjoy that. They are way better than they have any right to be. They're very, and like, very well done.
So Roman, besides just being the patriarch of the Samoan dynasty, he's basically like, he cut this awesome promo that you get little pieces of in the video package, where he's like, Daniel Bryan, you're a dreamer. Dreamers are selfish. You need this. You want this. You have to get people behind you in order to get the title. I'm selfless. I am he didn't put it quite like this, but he's basically saying like he's overflowing with power. And so he's able to kind of lend his greatness
Wow,
everyone.
this is really a way better character. This makes so much more sense. Yeah.
When at the same time he's still kind of douchey Roman Reigns who does jump punches.
I did notice
and shit,
they still
right?
kept
So
the
he's,
jump
and
punch.
he's still a heel. And
It's a major signature move.
It's part
Try
of his
and think of
act.
it like this. Try and think of it like you're 7 years old. It's probably really cool.
That's
Yeah.
He
let's
looked-
put a
when
pin
he's
in
I
in
that.
think
the
it's
air-
stupid also, but
when he's in the air, he looks like a silhouette of Superman. That's the point.
right, when AJ Styles does it, he looks like AJ Styles doing that, not Superman.
But the thing is, like, he's still kind of undeserving. And having Jey Uso interfering in the match sort of put that forward. So the crowd is booing him now, as they should. And he's been doing this great heel character with no crowd since the summer. So there's this moment where he's about to power bomb Daniel Bryan through the table, and the crowd is all chanting, "You suck." And he finally, after all these years of the crowd telling him he sucks, gets to respond a little bit. And he just kind of shakes his hand like, no, he shakes his head like, no,
Because he does it. And he knows it.
right. And then he fucking power bombs him through the table.
The third ingredient in this that we really haven't mentioned yet is Edge.
I was rooting for
Far
Edge
and
to
away
win, I'm not
my
gonna
favorite
lie.
part of this match. Far and away.
Edge was incredible.
His facial expressions
Edge
are
wrestles
just
like he
amazing.
knows he got a second chance lottery ticket, and he doesn't know how many matches he's got left, but he's gonna make them count.
But he's going to wrestle
I
every
was
single match
another
like it's his
example of
last match
Edge
now.
comes out, intro music's blasting, he runs back and forth a few times, comes back to the middle, and is very clearly like, oh shit. Okay, all right, all right, and then and as he's walking down, he's trying to look really mean while also very, very visibly out of breath already.
Right.
And then we got
It's
Daniel
possible
Bryan.
he breathed in some of his pyro, you know?
Yeah. And then we got just like smiley Daniel Bryan. Like, hey guys, I'm in the main event again. Isn't
Yeah,
that cool?
It was a needed effect.
For the
The
dynamics
story of
of
Daniel
the wrestling.
Bryan, the story
We
of
needed
Daniel
Daniel
Bryan
Bryan.
during the match, I think, was good because his character as the only actual babyface purely in the match, he kind of came off like he wasn't taking it that seriously until some major damage had been done to him, and then he snaps into place. And I thought that was an effective thing.
And he even exhibits some ruthlessness in pulling the ref out of the ring to keep
Right.
Edge from winning the match, getting Edge back as Katie pointed out when we were watching it, for Edge screwing him out of the title in his previous match with
Fastlane.
Roman Reigns.
Yeah, out of
Fastlane.
context, it seems like a heel move, but you remember then that Edge kept him from winning the title.
Right.
So it's a comeuppance, not a heel
Yeah.
move.
The thing is, I feel like the story, if they had kept Edge babyface, even though Edge is always better as heel, if they had kept Edge babyface and made the story just, him coming back for his last chance against the heel Roman Reigns, I think it would have been a slightly more coherent story, but the match wouldn't have been as good because I don't think Edge and Reigns' styles really make for a very dynamic match. The only thing I could imagine them doing was something that did happen in the match, where they both fucking speared
that was
each
pretty-
other.
That was
fun, yeah.
incredible.
So good.
Yeah, that was really good. That too is all I wanted from those two together specifically.
Right. All the stuff
Well, yeah,
with
but
Edge
for
and
me, the
Bryan
climax
in the ring was just
of the
cool
match,
fucking wrestling.
by which I meant the 5 seconds where I was like, oh, okay, all right, no, I'm back. Okay, I'm in, and it's, okay, was when Edge had Reigns in some kind of a hold where he's pulling on his face, the crippler crossface.
The crippler
and then
crossface.
Right.
Chris Benoit's
and then
finisher,
Bryan came over and then
okay.
also got him, and you just see Edge go, let go! Let go! And then they start headbutting each other in a way that was extremely fake, but highly hilarious.
Yeah.
No, it was
Well,
that
we
was a
don't
really good
watch-
spot.
No,
we
yeah,
don't
of
want
course.
Bryan really headbutting people anymore.
No, we don't want
we
Edge really
watched-
headbutting anyone either.
Yeah.
we watched the match with him and Nigel McGuinness where they're actually headbutting each other really hard. And this kind of wacky side-to-side thing was a welcome change. Roman's face when the both of them were tearing into him at the same time was absolutely brilliant.
Oh, Roman was selling it perfectly. He looked kind of like loopy, but also frustrated.
What was great about the fakeness of the headbutting was that in comparison to like when guys are doing like a punch exchange that just looks really fake and kind of takes you out of it, this had almost a kids on the playground fucking with each other, it was almost cartoonish too, but like not in a bad way, just in a like genuinely fun way. I don't know, I guess it was clearly fake slapstick, but it like worked with the story of the match in a way that I felt really added to it as opposed to taking away.
By the way, there was another kind of clever element about that thing with the piece of the broken piece of the chair. So there's this tug of war between Edge and Roman, and somehow Edge comes away with just like a little piece of the chair, and he's not able to use it at first because Roman just grabs him and he drops it. But then after he puts him in the crossface, he takes that little piece of the chair and puts it in Roman's mouth when he's wrenching back on it, which was kind of cool. I don't know who thought of that. Or if it was
well.
Well, I mean, I could imagine it actually not being planned. Like maybe they really did just break off a little piece of the chair and Edge thought to use it.
It seemed like something they'd have to gimmick.
Probably. Yeah, probably. But it was so subtle that, it's like it wasn't presented as a big gimmick, So, end of the match. Edge, frustrated by Bryan costing him the match earlier, starts to bring some chairs into there. And does the, wonderfully named concerto onto Daniel Bryan. Then Reigns, before he can concerto Reigns, Jey Uso comes back, which kind of annoyed me. He took out Jey Uso with the DDT on the steps earlier in the match. And having Uso come back in after they had gotten rid of them, I thought was a little bit lazy in terms of the booking. But anyway, that's what happens. That distracts Edge long enough for Reigns to hit the spear. And then Reigns hits a concerto on Edge and then piles the fucking two bodies up and pins them both. Like the dominant motherfucker that the Roman Reigns character is now and should be. And I think will continue to be for, possibly years.
He has achieved his final form.
Totally.
Almost all of the wrestling fans that I saw debating the finish of this match before the match said that the title was probably going to change hands, and the reason for the triple threat was so Roman wouldn't have to get pinned, and so that they could, maybe chase the belt back onto him. Nobody I saw at all predicted Roman's gonna pin both of them at once and look great doing it. But no, they put him over. I said it was, this wasn't his first, victorious WrestleMania main event, but this was his first successful one, where he looked a lot better coming out than he did before.
It also just makes a lot of sense because, whether, not speaking to how, quote-unquote, real it is in terms of his personality, but, he is the most prominent guy who is currently wrestling who is a member of this family, by a huge margin. Maybe Dwayne Johnson is more famous, but Dwayne Johnson is more famous. But in terms of the guy who is out there wrestling right now, it's he is the patriarch of the family. You know what I mean? And I would,
And it's not a short list. There's him. There's both of the Usos. There's Jacob Fatu, who's not in the WWE, who's really he's the champion of a league called Major League Wrestling, and I've seen a few of his matches, and he looks like a destroyer, but he ain't no Roman Reigns.
There's Tama Tonga in NJPW.
Right, he has family in New Japan,
I'd be willing
too.
to bet, and tell me if I'm wrong about this, but I'd be willing to bet that, that Dwayne, that for people who are like out there doing the job, wrestling regularly, like I'm sure people who like respect Dwayne Johnson, obviously, and like think that he's great, but I'm sure there's a little bit of a like, all right, well, I mean, some of us still have to wrestle for a living, buddy. You know, some of us are actually still out here in the fucking trenches doing the fucking shit.
And that dynamic is going to make for a fucking awesome match when Reigns and Rock finally wrestle, probably at WrestleMania 39, because it's going to be in LA.
I'm sure it will coincide with the release of Fast 10
Yeah.
and fucking just where, and because Fast 10 is probably the one where they're going to space, right? Because they still have to go. That's like the one thing they have. That's like the one thing they haven't done yet is gone to space. So like, and it makes it like it has to go there eventually. So I'm sure that will be
Yo, Fast 9 about to make John Cena a movie star, like a real movie star.
Oh yeah. I missed John Cena on this show. Can I just say?
So, a little bit. So, but I could see them just going with Roman as champion until WrestleMania 39. Like that's how big he is right now. And they've been going with longer title reigns lately, or at least trying to.
Good.
He could have the longest title reign.
He should hold it until whenever they're ready to put it on Biggie.
Okay, yeah. Like
they have a whole other world title to work with too.
Right. Yeah.
No,
and this
I'm not
isn't
kidding.
even the WWE title. This is the Universal title.
Universal Championship. No, screw it. I want him to be champ years. I want to see Roman like face Walter in the UK or something, Let's do it.
So, Evan, besides, I guess, being bored with a lot of the match, was there anything else about it that you thought was particularly bad?
I think that
you particularly disliked about it?
I thought that. So I'll say, Reigns and Edge's, like you kind of said before, their styles they have sort of similar styles, and so it's like neither of them are like the flashiest wrestler. I guess there wasn't a. It didn't strike me that there was a big variety of style of wrestling between when it's three guys in the ring all kind of just clobbering each other. It didn't. I mean, I also look, here's the truth, man.
I feel that way between Roman
I just
and
think
Edge,
I might be. I think we might. I think the grand experiment of this podcast has blown up in our collective faces. Mine the worst.
Well, no, blew up in your faces.
You like wrestling,
so.
but the experiment of the podcast to see if you
yeah.
could really get somebody who's not a wrestling fan into wrestling by explaining the history, by showing them great matches, and I think it just I'm through the looking glass.
Well, here's the thing for me. We could probably get someone that doesn't like wrestling to get into wrestling through explaining history of wrestling, just not you.
Maybe, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I was never trying to get you into wrestling. I was always just trying to get your responses myself.
Yeah, nobody
I guess I
fucking
fucking thought that
liking
then
wrestling.
at the beginning. I thought that the idea was we were going to try to get me. But no, you're right. Maybe it was also, maybe just me trying to understand. I guess that was how I framed it a lot. Yeah. I know it was trust me, I think about that every fucking time.
So whatever the idea was.
I guess you're right then, yes.
At this point, I think we're just trying to get your reactions to things, which are still very entertaining. So
I find myself regressing back to where I was in episode 2, where I watch these matches and I'm just like, all right, well, now he's punching the one guy. All right, now the other guy's punching him. All right, oh, he threw him. Okay, who cares about any of this, It is.
Well, it's time for Plan B, contesting pornography.
Do I have a lot of opinions about pornography? I don't know. I got to investigate that. I probably do. I have some. I don't know if I
do
a podcast series worth, but I have some things that I could say. But that's no. I'm not.
I'm not doing a porn
Nobody
podcast.
should. Nobody should.
If y'all
I've tried
watch
listening
it.
to them. They're way less interesting than you think.
Hey,
Does anybody?
So
is that a hole in the market?
There's
that
so
needs
many.
To be
There are
No,
so
there's
many.
porn
It's
podcasts.
fucking crazy.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
My
Who wants to
actual
hear
porn
anybody
stars,
else
too.
talk about it? Like,
know,
right?
who-
Like, yeah.
Right. I mean, that's the thing about most wrestling podcasts, and I don't mean to disparage any of our distinguished colleagues.
No.
So the by far the most interesting wrestling podcasts are done by insiders, right? By wrestlers or people in creative, things like that.
People who have real stories.
Yeah, though I do think we have had a unique vision in doing this podcast, and
Yes.
that's why we have been clinging on to you as part of it, Evan, because you do still contribute that unique flavor.
A, I
and
appreciate that,
perspective.
and B, I do think that part of why I finally said, like, okay, look, like I have a limited number left that I can do is because I'm now getting to a point where, kind of where I was before I had to take a break, where I'm not gonna have anything interesting or funny. I'm not gonna have any fun reactions because when I start watching wrestling now, I just want it to stop. I just want to watch something else. I just want to go watch I want to rewatch Schitt's Creek for. No, and I don't mean that in a particularly poisonous. But I think especially post after the last 14 months, I think we're all trying to make sure that we are spending our time on this earth in the ways that we have the most value, right? That we find to have the most value. And while I very much do love doing this with the three of you and love this so much, just the void of feeling I have about wrestling is just getting to a point where I would rather just have a friendship with you guys outside of wrestling, come support you when you guys go do wrestling, because that is still wrestling that I will love, is wrestling that you guys are a part of. But I don't want to have any more of this knowledge inside of me anymore. I want.
Evan, you should play yourself in XSW.
I would do
this
that
guy
in a
that hates
fucking
wrestling
second.
and hates that he's there.
I would absolutely do that.
Doc,
good
wouldn't that be
idea.
incredible? We can cut this conversation out because we're kayfabing it. But wouldn't him...
This could just be a deep cut for anyone who's willing to listen, all these episodes into our podcast, an hour into this episode after we finish talking about the matches. I may pitch that to one Mr. Fesh.
No, Evan playing himself in XSW. Yeah. Why does he have to be there? There's some stupid reason that he has to be there.
But once again, what becomes complicated, and where I get sort of a real moral question here is it might be funny that I have these reactions, but at the end of the day, it's I really hate something that is a huge part of your guys' lives, and that's not an energy I like to bring to any situation. You know what I mean? I don't lately I have been doing a lot of volunteer work in my neighborhood, right? Trying to get out of myself, trying to experience ego death and just fucking help other people. And in doing so, I have been around a lot more people who are very religious than I have been in my life previously. And it's a real mix of people, but there are some people who are a lot more religious than people I deal with in my everyday life. And we love talking about anything else. We love talking about the work that we do. And obviously I'm respectful when stuff about religion comes up. I'm not, I went through my new atheist phase, and I'm not that guy anymore. I describe myself as an apatheist these days, where I'm just fundamentally unconcerned with the existence or non-existence of a deity. But if we got into a real deep discussion about religion with these people, it would be a fucking bummer, because once I really expressed the full spectrum of my feelings, it would just suck. It would just feel bad for everybody. And I do sort of feel like I'm going to church with 3 Catholics, and I'm just the guy who's yeah, but what about all that stuff that the Catholic Church did? And then you guys well, obviously we know that, but it's still, this is a big part of our faith and life, and
Look, the WWE has killed significally fewer people.
But how long the Catholic Church has had 2,000 years. WWE's been around about 40 years. So let's really do the math on that.
Yeah, they might. Evan has a point. They might.
And I'm just saying, in terms of deaths per year.
That's true. The Catholic Church certainly doesn't kill people
per year,
they used to.
We might, it's a per capita thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's actually a very interesting question that I might have to take some numbers together and do some math on.
I think the rate of death has been decreasing faster in WWE
What
over
if we
recent
count
years.
broken lives?
Perhaps. That's a whole other story.
But I think that too. I think this generation of wrestlers is
We're taking better care of ourselves.
So here's an interesting point that may have to do something with this. It used to be like, they kicked me out of the WWE or WWF. That was clearly the peak of my career. I don't know what I'm going to do now. And I don't know how to not live on the road because I've been on the road 6-7 days a week. So just a few days ago, shortly after WrestleMania, the WWE fired about 10 wrestlers that were on their roster. And almost all of them that have made public comments have been comments to the tune of, "Oh, thank goodness I'm free. Oh, man, what a relief. Thank you for all the opportunities the WWE gave me. I liked these people in there. I'm going home." And they're not on the road 6 days a week. They're happy to move on to another part of their lives, which means that they can see another part in their lives, which did not used to be the case.
And then there are people like fucking Edge, who's like, I broke my neck doing this, and I've done everything I possibly can to come back and do it again. But he's of that older generation, too.
He's somewhere in the middle. He's not like like the real old school generation, but he's not the new school.
Back when they started at some point really heavily frowning on doing things that'll break your neck. And Edge started before that.
Right. No, he did. He started in the peak of neck breaking shit.
Oh yeah. The peak of neck breaking.
Yes.
Where you get the fusion, you come back in 10 months. Kurt Angle got a lot of heat because he refused to get the fusion surgery. He got an experimental neck surgery. And to this day, he doesn't regret it. He's like, I came back faster. He's like, I can move my neck up and down. I can move my neck back and forth. I have friends that can't. And I'm like,
Edge, in fact, pioneered the much more dangerous style in a lot of ways. The TLCs.
Oh, he helped.
Things like that,
Yes.
Which I'd still like to show you TLC 2 at some point, Evan, but I think in the time we have left in the podcast, if you're a bit more Joshi and British wrestling, which is a very different kind of flavor, and get some guests that I've really wanted to have on, and maybe try to tick those last couple of WrestleMania boxes. We'll see if that happens. Happens. But we're winding down, and I feel it myself too. In a way, I'd still like to do some kind of podcast.
Oh yeah,
with
sure,
Doc
me
and
too.
Katie in some way.
Oh yeah, no, we're still going to do some podcast. This space is going to be filled, dear listener. Don't think not. I really like doing this. I like having my voice out there. I like watching wrestling with Ben and Katie. I really like listening to what Evan has to say. But I like Evan in the times that I am, and you might not think this about me, but there are times in my life where I'm not in wrestling. And I will as we all get physically closer together, see Evan a lot more in that
and
context.
once again,
I'm sure
cannot
over the next few
overstate.
years.
First, if I will still totally come over, even when you guys are doing a wrestling thing. I will still come over and watch it with you, and it'll be fun. I will absolutely. I am extremely looking forward to attending your wrestling events, and that
I think it's unfortunate that we haven't watched wrestling together for this podcast.
Yeah.
I also find that unfortunate. We
Because,
tried.
Evan, you sitting by yourself and watching wrestling alone
that
is
true.
not how it's
That
supposed
is,
to work.
Yeah, no, we've said that before. Yeah,
Us having a couple of drinks and fucking smoking some weed and
Legal
chilling out
weed.
and
We
not-
are in New York City where it is
Yeah, it's
now
legal
completely
now.
legal. Weed.
And yes,
it is.
my
I
employer,
just tried
it's
weed
legal
for the
now.
first time
And,
last week. It's interesting.
First
yeah.
time, yeah, it's great.
Oh, me too.
And not paying very close attention to every single detail of what's
that's
happening
not
the whole
happening
time.
anyway. But yes,
But just,
I see what you mean. Yeah, that's
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. I can do that now, being the fan and scholar of it that I am. But the vast majority of time that we've watched wrestling,
yeah. No,
we've
that's
been
So
chilling,
and now I mean we're all fully vaxxed. now. So maybe in these last, okay, in these last few episodes, I absolutely, I should absolutely come over and we'll have. I will watch an entire WrestleMania. I will come over and we can watch an entire WrestleMania.
Oh, interesting.
We should pick a good one for
I
the
guarantee
poor boy.
you, if it has matches we've already done, I do not remember those matches. So
That's fine. Look, we've essentially been having a business meeting for the last 5 minutes on the podcast, and that's cool. I'm glad everybody can see what we're doing.
Good call.
But we should probably wrap things up.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That wasn't a business meeting. That was a state of the
I like
address.
that. Yeah. State of the deal.
Okay, Katie. That's actually a state of the contesting wrestling address.
This has been Contesting Wrestling. We hope that you get something out of this. We hope, and I hope listeners, I hope that my frustration and anger isn't just amusing for you, but also causes you to think. Because look, I think about the shit that I love all the time, and then ask myself, why do I love it? Really interrogate it. It's good to do that with the things that you like, to really reach in and ask yourself, why do I like these things? What is it about these things? What do I, And I hope that my somewhat dickish dismissal of the things that you guys love, some way, it also has inspired you in some capacity.
What Evan's saying is he certainly hopes that you got more out of this
that is what I'm
experience
saying,
than
isn't
he
it?
did.
Holy shit.
Wrestlers and wrestling fans love heels, Evan. Don't worry about it.
I thought I thought it was more heelish. I thought he was saying that he hopes that he has ruined wrestling for all
I will.
of you.
If somebody
And
came
then
up
you
to me and was like,
stop
"I used to
watching
love wrestling. I listened to Contesting Wrestling, and you're fucking right about all of it." And Evan, thank you. I now decided to get my life together and go do something of value. That would mean a lot to me. That would be great. If that has happened for you, come tell me that. But
See, I don't think you've quite made that case yet, though. You've talked about how you've become disinterested in it. But I would, as much as you don't want to be negative, and I know we're still doing this, but as much as you don't want to be negative, to hear your fucking genuine, deep critiques of what you think
all right,
is...
I will get that together.
Bad for society, as you've said, and bad for people.
I'll get that. Yep, I will get that together.
Let's
I will get
hear
that
them.
together.
That could be a closing argument.
And I'll contest them too.
I will contest heavily.
We will.
All right, you know what? I will do
keeps
that.
me
I will get that
alive.
together. Might not be next episode, but I will. That'll be something.
That's an idea.
Yeah.
I'm thinking towards the end. I'm thinking that's a thing to chew on for a minute.
We might do it. We're gonna have my student on in a couple episodes who's been dying to be on for a while.
Oh.
And you could try to break
man.
his little heart.
I know.
Don't do that,
guys. It's already going to be hard for me to go to this place. But we'll see. But regardless of my feelings about
We'll see.
wrestling, this has been Contesting Wrestling, and we love you.
Bye.